Hello. So far, all the poems we have looked at were written during or after the Prime Tang era, which is after 700 AD, mostly in Tang Dynasty, with one exception in the following Song Dynasty. Today, we are going to take a look at a poem written much earlier, about 500 years before Tang Dynasty, in the period of the Three Kingdoms. A bit of Chinese history here. The United Han Dynasty was coming to an end during this time, and there were numerous warlords fighting for the control of China and to establish a new dynasty. Among them, there were three prominent kingdoms, which were Wei, Shu, and Wu, which somehow reached a balance, and none of them could conquer the others. So China entered this three-kingdom period and remained split for about 50 years, until the next dynasty united it again. This is one of the most colorful and eventful periods in Chinese history, with countless stories and legends handed down to this day. So this is the period of Sanguo. The most famous literature is a long novel called Sanguo Yan Yi, Tales of the Three Kingdoms. Really fascinating. I think there are English translations, and I'm sure you would all enjoy reading it. So from this timeline, you'll see that after the Three Kingdoms, there were still many dynasties that China went through before reaching the Tang Dynasty, which we are now quite familiar with. There were two united Jin dynasty, West Jin and East Jin, before it split again into a number of northern and southern dynasties. And then the Sui dynasties united China again for a very short period of time before Tang Dynasty emerged. As a reference point, Li Bai was born in 701 AD and Du Fu in 712 AD, which was pretty much the start of the prime Tang era. During this Three Kingdoms period, in the West it was still Roman times, and interestingly, the Roman Empire was also undergoing some big turmoils for decades until Diocletian brought things back under control. So somehow these two different civilizations coincidentally followed a similar path during this time. Anyway, among these three kingdoms, Wei were the strongest, and its founder was Cao Cao, an eminent warlord, politician, and poet. He has numerous sons, the most prominent ones being Cao Pi and Cao Zhi, who were both also extremely accomplished poets. Cao Zhi, in particular, was a giant in the ancient Chinese literature, leaving numerous masterpieces, influencing later poets generations after generations, and often quoted as being exceedingly talented, and in many cases regarded as idols for poets. But politically, for a time, these two brothers were fighting to be the successor of Cao Cao. And eventually, the elder brother Cao Pi succeeded, becoming the emperor after Cao Cao died. So there was always some serious tensions between these two brothers. Cao Pi was always a bit uneasy and wished he could get rid of Cao Zhi if he could. On one occasion, he found an excuse and ordered Cao Zhi to write a full poem within 7 walking steps, and if he failed to do so, he would be executed. This is really harsh and cruel, but talented as he was, Cao Zhi accomplished this task without any difficulty. And this poem is what we are learning today. Its title is, based on its story, very fittingly, 七步诗, 7-step poem. Let's read this poem together first. 煮豆持作羹，漉菽以为汁。萁在釜下燃，豆在釜中泣。本自同根生，相煎何太急。This is a 五言古诗, which means it has 5 characters per line, but has no set rules about tones or rhythm, nor number of lines in the poem. In this case, we have 6 lines. We've also seen this format before in Meng Jiao's 游子吟, where we have 谁言寸草心，报得三春晖. In fact, the format of 绝句 only settled in the Tang Dynasty. So if you read poems before the Tang Dynasty, they are pretty much all considered 古诗 in terms of their format. 煮 is to boil, to cook. 豆 is beans. 吃 here means to take as, to treat something as. 做 can be vaguely translated as. And 羹 is soup. 露 is to let something drip or to filter. 疏 is basically another word for beans. 以 means so that, so as to. 为 is to become or to take as. And the 汁 means juice, or another way to say soup. So this couplet is very simple. You want to make some bean soup. You boil the beans and let the liquid pass through and drip. I guess at this point, we would all be wondering what this poem is about. Why would anybody be interested in composing a poem about how to make bean soup? Let's read on. 萁 is the stalk of the beans plant. 在 is at. 釜 is pot, which is used to cook the beans. 下 is under. 燃 is to burn. So to cook the beans, you actually use the stalk from the same plant and burn it under the pot. So economical, isn't it? But 豆在釜中泣. 中 is inside, and 泣 is to weep, to cry. So while the bean stalk is burning underneath, the beans are crying in the pot. Why? 本 from the beginning, originally. 自 is from. 同 same. 根 is root, and 生 to grow. So the beans were saying to the stalk, you and I were originally grown from the same root, i.e., we are of the same family. We are brothers. And then, 相煎何太急. This is sudden, totally unexpected, and huge. 相 means to do some action from one side to the other. 煎 is to fry, or in this case, to simmer. How is, 何 is how, or why. 太 is to, and 急 is to rush. So 相煎何太急 basically means we are from the same plant. We are really one between us. But why you have to rush so much to cook me from under, to destroy me? So this is a true intention of the poem. It wasn't talking about the bean soup, but a fabulous allegory about persecution between brothers, innocent and harmless at the beginning, but roaring with grim accusation and attack in the end. According to legend, Cao Pi, the emperor, when heard this, felt very embarrassed and shameful. Who wouldn't? Even to this day, when we want to condemn someone who is harming their close friends or families, we would often quote the lines from this poem. 本是同根生，相煎何太急. We see poems from this much earlier period, compared to the Tang poems, are generally much simpler in language, very straightforward in expression, and not too refined either, nor with too many hidden messages, like what we've seen in Du Fu's poem. And they tended to use allegories, telling stories or describing themes. Some are related to the theme of the poems, like this one, but some are largely unrelated and perhaps only have some very vague and loose connections from the mood. It's what we now refer to as 比兴, which has since become a very unique and essential way of writing in Chinese poetry. One more thing about this poem is, sometimes it was modified to a simpler version, which seems more concise and to the point. 煮豆燃豆萁，豆在釜中泣。本是同根生，相煎何太急。This argument is kind of true, but unfortunately it is not what Cao Zhi wrote. And after all, this is a poem from 7 steps, so 6 lines, 1 line per step, with 1 final step to spare, or to begin, would be more appropriate and exciting. In any case, whether this story is actually true is not really certain. Some argue that the emperor can't be that foolish, knowing how talented his younger brother was and still making such a blunt request. But whether this story is actually real or not, it has survived to this day and remained one of the favorite and most dramatic stories from ancient times that people love to tell today. That's all. Thank you very much.